There's nothing super exciting about a 24-105 f4, especially for the price. It kind of makes you scratch your head and think, what is so good about this lens? Years ago, I was giddy about the first RF-L lens that I got with my RP, but it has become mundane. When I packed for Ireland, I knew we would use a lot of public transportation in Dublin, so I wanted to keep a tight kit. But even the thought of packing this was just kind of boring. I was wheeling, I was dealing, I was bargaining in my own head for ways that I could keep the Fast 85 in the bag, for ways that I could sneak the Fast 14 in the bag, but neither made sense for how I wanted to shoot and how I needed to pack. I feel guilty thinking about this lens in that way, but thankfully I brought it. Especially for travel, mundane has a place. Just like it did on my road trip last year, the 24-105 came through, and again, I took most of my favorite images from this trip with this lens. I've said it before, I'll probably say it again, the Canon RF 24-105 f4 is the epic all-in-one travel lens. It's not flashy, that's why sometimes I try to trick myself into not packing it, but the range, weather sealing, size, image stabilization, and constant f4 never let me down. On this trip in particular, what that combination of things allowed me to do was to simply keep the lens on the camera most of the time. It sounds dumb, it's kind of a given, but that's really important when traveling. I don't really like to stop on a city street and swap lenses. I don't really like to swap my lens when hiking. You can't always swap your lens when hiking. And this might surprise you, the weather in Ireland is gloomy. You probably don't need weather sealing for periods of intermittent drizzle or light showers, but for one, I don't like to take my chances. That's where the L build comes in. And two, whether sealed or not, the range allows you to keep this on longer. If it's rainy and I'm avoiding taking my bag off to swap for the 70-200 for example, I can still go past 70 all the way to 105 and make do. When I use this lens, there are always occasions where I wish I could go wider than 24, but I usually stitch multiple exposures or pull out the iPhone ultrawide to get around it in those cases. When you pack for a trip, you're inherently making some sort of compromise. You get all the good that I've covered here and that I've covered before. What you miss is something like the dreamy subject background separation that you get by bringing your 85. You'll miss a faster wide end on trips that might be good for astro or group shots. If you're packing extremely light, you might pack this 24-105 as your sole zoom lens over the 70-200 and skip opportunities on the longer end. The way that I personally like to approach this on a trip is this. If the destination is new to me, if it's relatively expensive to get to, if I know I won't be back often, and I know that I'll have a good amount of time for photography, as opposed to just casually shooting, then I pack for utility. It's the f4 zooms, maybe a tiny prime. That's what I did in Ireland, both f4s and the nifty 50 to get some f1.8 action in. For my personal shooting and travel preferences, this allows me the most flexibility in playing it safe. It ensures that I'm capturing and returning home with what I would expect to when going to a new location. If the destination isn't new, maybe I shoot it all the time, or if I'm going anywhere that's not too picturesque, that's when I'm packing for fun, creativity, a challenge, if I just want to try something different. The 50mm has been climbing my ranks recently as well, but the 85mm 1.4 I find is something I love for hiking and for weekend trips, especially for shooting shots of other people. If I had wanted to be more adventurous and daring on this trip, I could have packed the 14, the 35, and the 85. It would have been roughly the same weight and footprint, and it would have offered a creative challenge to use primes alone. No weather sealing on the 35 though. A big reason why the 24-105 is a much better choice on a trip like this, assuming that I'm going to be stopping down much of the time anyway. Years in, the build is great, the lens is holding up really well, but the price has gone up. I think it's still worth it, and it will be harder for true beginners to determine this, but if possible, try to figure out if you want this lens when you first purchase your new RF body. If you know for sure that you do, I'd recommend getting it as one of the kit packages up front so that you can save a little bit of money.